Hey, this is Scorn from Dead Animal Assembly Plant, and you are listening to As Native as I Can Be, right?
Native as I
Yes.
can be.
And everybody enjoyed the show. Tune in, listen often.
Who's the podcast host that you love the most? Coming to you live from coast to coast. Call me Thunderlip, Spaceman, or G. It's just me being native as I can be.
Hey, what's up? Gino Ray, host of Native as I Can Be. We're going to do something a little different today. Going to go solo on this one, which it's not preferred, but my the episode that was going to be out today is taking a little longer to edit, which is fine. It's going to be visually and audio very cool, so I'm okay with it taking a little longer to make sure it's done right. So what I'm going to do is I did this once before in my first kind of go round of podcasts, which is basically explaining who I am and why I'm here and what I'm doing. And I decided that I would, and also I did that just to do an episode. And so I kind of rushed it and it was kind of all over the place. And I listened to it once and never listened to it again. But I think this time, I don't know why I chugged an energy drink right before. Now I'm burping on camera. I kind of wrote a little bit of an outline and I've sort of framed it as a letter to Che so that if he wanted to come back and listen to this down the road, he could. And just to warn you, I'll probably bounce around between addressing him directly as if he was listening to it and just speaking in general. Because I'm just going to go with it. We're going one take and yeah, it's going to fly. So next week will be my episode with Jason Moore, filmed at the legendary Dante is in downtown Portland as he got ready for a show. He's in the band Dead Animal Assembly Plant. We got a bunch of stuff coming up. So this should be the only episode like this for a while. But anyway, this is who I am. This is why I'm doing a podcast. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. So let's get into it. And I'm going to sniff a lot because I'm getting over an allergy attack. And I do it just because. Yeah, so the reason, so I was born in Astoria, Oregon, and I ended up living in a town on the Oregon coast called Reedsport. And the time, and this would have been the 80s, 85 through, I think, 93. I lived there, or 94. At that time, it was around 4,500 to 5,000 people. Not a very big, it was a town. And it's kind of a logging community, kind of a fishing community. Um, and I had a grandpa there and a grandma there and an aunt or two, maybe a couple of cousins, and lived there with my mom and my sisters, Jen and Jody, who were sometimes would, I know Jody went and lived with her dad at times, and Jen moved out pretty young, but yeah, single mom, scraping by, food stamp kind of stuff. And Reedsport is a very, very white town, which is fine. And I don't think I had like a bad childhood at all. I look back quite fondly on my childhood actually, and Reedsport was what Reedsport actually made me want to do a lot was get out of Reedsport. And not because I hated it. I just thought that there was more out there. And Reedsport at the time just seemed small. And uh, I just couldn't picture myself living there for the rest of my life. I've always been a dreamer and an imaginer, um, and just had visions of other things I wanted to do in life. And I didn't see Resport as providing those opportunities. And then, on spring breaks, summer breaks, things like that, I would go stay with my dad at Portland. And Portland seemed like the biggest city in the world to me. And it was because I'd never been anywhere else. But my dad lived downtown, and uh, the buildings and the Macs and the buses, and it just seemed like a real city to me. And I had a lot of freedom too, and I did as in Resport as well. This was back in the day when you could run around all day long and come home when the streetlights came on and be fine. But yeah, I knew my way around Portland pretty well when I was pretty young by the bus system. Um, but I saw MC Hammer and at the Waterfront Blues Festival when I was real little. Not real little. It would have been like kind of right before he started popping off nationally, and I was playing with some other kids around my age in front of the stage because it was outdoors in a grassy area, and he actually yelled at us. He like told us to calm down, and he said something like, get these kids under control. You guys are supposed to be here watching the concert. So yeah, I should go back and figure out when that was, and because that was funny to me. But it's funny to me now. It kind of scared me then. But Resport, especially, I spent a lot of time with my grandpa, your great grandpa Lyle, and he was kind of a man about town in Resport. Kind of knew everybody, been there forever. Um, Used to be a logger and a farmer, and very charismatic and larger than life, and had a billion stories, and a lot of them were made up, but they were funny, and he just had a way about him that people gravitated towards. And what me and him used to do a lot, he would take me fishing, and I stunk at it, and was basically only good at like losing hooks, and snagging my rig on stuff. And but it was fun. We spent a lot of time together, and he I don't know if he showed me a Blazer game or how that all came about, but at some point I became very interested in the Portland Trail Blazers and would spend many hours up at his house, either listening to the games on the radio, or he had one of those gigantic, like 8-foot satellite dishes, and he could find all these, bootleg feeds or whatever. And so we would watch or listen to Blazer games all the time. And that was our thing. It was cool. And I'm still a Blazer fan to this day. And the other thing that I got super interested in that carries on today is wrestling. And again, I don't know when I saw my first wrestling match, how it happened. I don't remember that particular detail, but every Saturday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there would be this wrestling show that came on TBS. And it didn't matter how nice a day it was, what I was doing, I almost always made it home to watch that show. It was 2 hours long, and I just remember watching it and being so invested in it that it was like I was sitting in the audience. And uh, back in those days, the knock on wrestling was, oh, it's fake and these guys are all buddies and da 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 da, whatever. Until you kind of like, you weren't like out and proud about being a wrestling fan. But then if you met one, it was so like, oh my God. And you had this little secret like bond. And, and I used to um, save all the cans, beer cans, soda cans, whatever, and go down and buy wrestling magazines with it. And if I couldn't buy, I would sit in the store and flip through them. And yeah, wrestling was a big part of it. Um, and it still is. And Che loves it. You love it, Che, if you're listening. And, um, but again, yeah, like the Blazers, I don't know where that came from. I don't know how it started. I just know that it's always been a presence, in my life. So, but yeah, as far as your sport, yeah, mostly white. I was a brown kid in that town, and there wasn't a lot of like blatant, you know, like being called names or anything like that, but especially, in the adults and some of the teachers, there was a different vibe that I got from them that I saw them giving to other kids. And I didn't understand it at the time. And because I don't think I was that unlikable. I was just a kid and probably a smart ass, but um, yeah. And so I kind of recognize these now as probably microaggressions is what we call them now. But uh, yeah. And, there was a hardware store kind of downtown Reedsport, an Ace Hardware or whatever. And I remember going in there and kind of being followed, or just kind of somebody peeking down the aisles. And I think I was buying like sandpaper to use as grip tape for a skateboard. But yeah, this guy is just kind of eyeballing me and just, yeah, I don't know, man. And so, you know, that's just what I grew up with. And I don't think if you've ever been in that position, it's an easy thing to explain. Um, it's not easy to explain to somebody that hasn't been in that position, I'll say. Because it would be easy to just write that off as being my imagination or whatever. But uh, I definitely felt like I was treated differently. And, um, you know, which, whatever, it's a different, that was the temperature in the room at the time. And I don't know what it's like in Resport now because I think I've been back once or twice since we moved away. So maybe 3 times. Um, but we moved away and it would have been freshman year, ninth grade. And we moved in the middle of basketball season. And I was just starting to kind of get to a little bit loftier spot and making a little more shots and this and that. And we moved. We moved to Apache Junction, Arizona. Me and my mom. And my mom tells me to this day that for a long time I didn't talk to her when we moved because we moved during basketball season. I don't really remember that. Maybe it's true, maybe not. But you know, but I mean, I was bummed out, obviously, that I was on the basketball team and we left during the season. But I don't remember giving her the silent treatment. I might have just been being a sulky teenager. But Arizona was an interesting place to move to because, I went from very super white town to being around a lot of brown people. And the first city we lived in was Chandler for a little while, and that school was super diverse compared to where I came from. And then we moved to Apache Junction, which is not as diverse, but also, but still diverse. But we moved there, and it was shortly after that that I was able to drive and explore, be out on my own. And also, not too long after I moved there, my mom adopted my second cousin, which is now my little brother, Kobe. Um, Kobe spelled different. Uh, so there was a lot of growing up that happened in that few years I was there. The and Jody moved down there eventually too. My sister Jody and her daughter Alex. So the freedom I was getting in Arizona, the ability to drive, and my mom at the time, I don't remember the name of the place she worked, but she worked like 7 to 7. So I think on Saturdays she would be gone all day, like every other Saturday. Um, then afternoons I would pick Kobe up from daycare, you know, be hanging out with him for a few hours till she got home, and we spent a lot of time together. And he did really become like a little brother to me. And I know that sounds weird. It feels weird saying it, but because biologically he's not my little brother, but he felt like a little brother to me. We were close there for a while, and I managed to mostly stay out of trouble, I think, until I guess it was into sophomore year. I think I'm doing this from memory, so if I get these dates wrong or whatever, um, that's why. But no, it was into junior year. Yeah, so I think in the sophomore year is when I had my first real alcohol experience, and you're gonna notice a pattern here. Um, I remember we had like a half day near the end of this school year, and I didn't have to pick my brother up for whatever reason. Maybe Jody was watching him. Maybe I think that's it. I can't remember. But somebody said, "Hey, we got a beer hookup," and I had been kind of anti-alcohol for a while because seeing a lot of stuff when I was a kid, kind of how adults act when they have too much alcohol, and it's kind of frightening, and they're loud and out of control and talk too close and just obnoxious. So I didn't really have any interest in having anything to do with it. And then, but the right person at the right time came along, and we got a beer hookup, and so I went. And back this would have been in the 90s, 95 or so, 96. And in those days, the 40 ounce that's all anybody wanted, like the 40 ounce in the paper bag. And there was St. Ides, Colt 45, and Old English, and Mickey's, and these like huge bottles of malt liquor, and they were nasty, but they would get you faded quick. And that's why and they were cheap. So, so we were hanging out in the middle of the afternoon at somebody's house, and I choked down my first few swigs, and when that buzz hit, I remember clearly. I remember going, "Oh, this is why people do this. Okay." And so I drank a little more, and I remember standing there trying to dribble a basketball, and it just like the ball was like coming up too fast, and I remember how funny it felt, and just stupid, man. And I didn't drink a ton, and also back then I was rail thin, like probably maybe 150 pounds, like 6 foot tall, like ribs poking out, no muscle. And so I truly was a lightweight in the sense of my tolerance, and I was just a lightweight guy. And after drinking however much I drank, of course, I ended up throwing up, and I was sitting out on somebody's curb throwing up, and it was making like a river of vomit and beer go down the sidewalk. And my friend's mom came and picked us up, and I remember she had this big green station wagon. I remember seeing her as she pulled up laughing at the state I was in, and then the whole drive home, are you gonna throw up? Are you gonna throw up? Don't throw up in my car. I don't, which I did. And then I got home, passed out on my couch, and my mom got home from work shortly afterwards, and she saw me asleep on my couch, and apparently my whole ass was hanging off the couch, and that's how she knew something was up. But that was my first experience with alcohol. And, the throwing up on the curb and I wasn't even really busted by my mom. Like, it wasn't like she just, like, I was sneaking around and she caught me. I passed out on the couch in the middle of the day. Like, that didn't deter me from doing it again and again and again and again throughout high school. To the point, and I think this would have been end of junior year. I'd been expelled from school for mostly attendance, but there were some disciplinary issues or whatever, and I had not told my mom, and the counselor that I spoke to gave me the option to do it. And so it was on a Friday, and I went, and I didn't tell her. And I went out over to a friend's house, and we were, I think, drinking. I think we were drinking Mickey's in his garage or something. And I had given my friend Joe a ride home, drunk off my ass. And thankfully, I got him home okay. But then on my way home, passed out at the wheel and drove my mom's truck into either a telephone pole or a tree. I don't know which. And I remember waking up to this poking feeling, like, I was like, what the hell? And it was super bright, and it was somebody sewing my nose back to my face, to the core, because my knot, like, I don't know if it's this side or this side, had been completely like ripped like this. So I was waking to being stitched, and then I had this tremendous pain in my back. And the other thing I remember my mom standing here and my little brother Kobe kind of next to her looking at me. And he was just like freaked out. And so in my attempt to kind of like put him at ease, my foot was sticking out of the blanket. So I like waved my foot like I was waving at him. I was like, hey, hey. And his look did not change. So it did not help. And so I had, the pain in my back was a lacerated spleen. It's lacerated and bruised. And I think I ended up being in intensive care for a couple of days. And then my overall stay in the hospital, I think, was 8. And they did surgery on my face, I think, I think they added something to my nose to kind of give it some shape. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't even know if I was told the details. I don't remember. Um, and the saddest, and then when I was finally discharged, the doctor told me, like I think no basketball or anything for like 3 months or 6 months or something. And I remember crying about it, and my mom started crying because I was crying. But I'm like, damn, dude, it's the beginning of summer. No basketball? Are you crazy? And uh, but I still snuck out and played basketball, and I still snuck out and drank. That's how already at 16, 17, whatever. That's how deep alcohol had been. Uh, how deep it had its claws in me that I nearly died after the first few times I had ever drank, and I still kept at it. So more on that later. So then, yeah, so that was junior year, crazy accident, almost killed me. I busted my ass to try and finish early, but I didn't. So I only had half days senior year. And, you get to the senior year and it's like, what do I do next? I had no clue. I wasn't that interested in college. But I kind of wanted to leave. And so I was reading through a Sports Illustrated, and they had a thing where you could send away for these personalized pins. You could get a pin that has like your name on it. And it was a little thing that you tore out, a little 3x5 card or whatever, 4x6 postcard. And you could fill out the information and send it out. And they would send you these free personalized pins. And what you were, doing was giving Uncle Sam your name and address, which obviously they have, but you're basically expressing interest in becoming a member of the United States Army. And so it was not long after I sent that card out that I was contacted by a recruiter, and I went down and saw him, and he told me all the right stuff about college and traveling the world and enlistment bonuses and da 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 da. And I took the ASVAB and pretty much right then, decided I was going to go into the Army. And about, I think it was 8 days after I graduated, I was on a plane to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri to do basic training. This is going to be super long, so I'm taking too long going over all these details, but I'll tell you a couple things that happened. The first day of basic training, they have they've issued us or no, they have us there with like our bags, and it was a rainy day. I remember that, even though it was June in Missouri, and everything's fine. Like we show up to the base. We're all kind of just sitting around wondering what's next. And they're like, all right, everybody up, come on. We get up and we go basically into the back of these cattle trucks, and they've got us jammed in there like super tight. And for space, we're holding our luggage or whatever in front of us like this. We're just like shoulder to shoulder, standing, going wherever. We don't even know. And this guy, I don't remember his name, but for some reason he looks up and he's like, well, this isn't too bad. And one of the drill sergeants who was in the back with us was just like, what the fuck did you say? This isn't bad. Get off my goddamn cattle truck. And the next thing you know, all hell is breaking loose. We pulled up to wherever we were supposed to be at, and they're yelling at us to get in a formation. Nobody knew what a formation was. We're still holding our stuff in front of us, and we're trying to navigate these directions while we're supposed to be looking down with our face in our bags, right? And it was just chaos, and it was raining and muddy. Everybody's screaming and yelling, and I had got into the formation, and I kind of looked up and I'm like, okay, there's somebody in front of me, somebody beside me, I'm good. And the next thing you know, I hear somebody go, you know, oh, look at this individual here. This guy thinks he's special. And I kind of was like, I feel sorry for that son of a bitch. Well, that son of a bitch was me because I was not aware that the line had shifted forward. So I was actually standing in between two rows by myself. And the drill sergeant, what the fuck is your problem? You think you're special? You think you're this, that, and the third thing? And I took my bag off. So we must have been issued our stuff by then because I had my full on big green duffel bag full of stuff. So I took that off of my shoulders and as hard as I could, chest pass into the drill sergeant and said, fuck this. And he caught it, and the next thing you know, every drill sergeant in the company, which was probably like eight or nine, just swarms me, just screaming, ah, and telling me to push up. And I was not doing, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And then, the rest of the company was moving forward to the next thing. And they were still just on my ass, yelling. And I was like, I'm not doing any of this. Like, you guys are crazy, right? And, I went and got the rest of my gear. Things kind of calmed down for a little bit, but like that first couple of weeks, anytime if I blinked, if I wiped my nose, if I anything, I was push Ray, and I was just in trouble. And eventually that kind of calmed down and I kind of settled in. And between about the third week and the sixth week, I was actually the company guidon bearer, which is the guy that holds the flag in front of the formation. So I'd kind of done a 180 from being this mouthy ass, little delinquent to being up front holding our company colors, right? And then we're getting ready to go to lunch one day, and the drill sergeant's up at the front of the formation holding a piece of paper. Where's Private Boo at? Where's Private Boo? Who knows where Private Boo is? And we're all just like, who the hell is Private Boo? Oh my God. And then he goes, get up here, Ray. And I was like, so it turns out one of my fellow platoon mates had started feeling me a little bit and had wrote a note, and it said, what's up, Private Ray? What's up, Boo? And then basically kind of a love letter of sorts, and didn't sign her name, but I knew who it was from. And she had dropped it before she gave it to me. And then some little punk ass snitch who was in trouble for something else turned the note into the drill sergeant rather than crumpling it up and throwing it away or giving it to me, which would have been the better thing to do. So yeah, then that resulted in me getting my first Article 15, first of many, for fraternization. And so the last 2 weeks of basic training, we would do our regular stuff during the day, the last couple trainings we had. And then afterwards, from like 6 to 11, I had to do extra duty, which meant, buffing hallways and mopping or whatever kind of crap they had me do. Sometimes it would be, the stupid like toothbrush on the floor thing and all that shit. But whatever. I still graduated basic and, I had a lot of fun. It was fun. I liked it. And, I didn't become like this hardcore army, brothers and blood and all that shit. I did not become that. To me, it was a job. It was not my life. I just thought I was there and I'm just going to do it. And, yeah. So after basic, I went to Georgia. Uh, when in Georgia, there was an incident where I went out and got drunk and came back to, no, I got drunk in the barracks, and somebody dived me out again, but I was probably being loud and obnoxious and aggressive or whatever. And so I went down and was getting mouthy with the drill sergeant. So I got in trouble again. And then there was another instance where I was out and uh, walking around drunk in Augusta, Georgia, and started mouthing off to this cop. And he said, if you're what's protecting our country, I feel bad for our country. And I said, if you're what's protecting the citizens of Augusta, I feel bad for the citizens of Augusta. And he did this little move where he twisted my arm and grabbed the back of my head, slammed it into the trunk of his car, put the cuffs on, put them on so bad they were cutting into my arms, and I was actually bleeding inside the sleeves of the coat I had on. And went to jail for disorderly conduct and was in jail for a weekend, and got in trouble for that. You know, that was my second and third Article 15, I think. And then I had to go do, like rehab, I guess is the best way I could think to call it. But I think by the time I was done with that training in Georgia, they just wanted to get rid of me. So I basically finished up my training there and then was sent on to South Korea. And it's the same story, different location. First night in South Korea, they said, you could do anything, just don't go into the city of Tongdeshan. That's not allowed. You can go over to that other base across the street, get food, whatever you want to do, but don't go into the city. You're not allowed to go into the city until you're at your permanent location, because I was at like a transition camp. And so what do? First night, South Korea, don't go. They called it downrange. Don't go downrange. Whatever you do, don't go downrange. What do? I go downrange and proceed to get hammered ass drunk and pass out at a table and get woken up by military police bringing me back to the barracks and Article 15 again. So I ended up going to my permanent location on the next base like 2 months late, I think, because I had all this extra duty to do now at this location. Just me and rules. I don't know. And I always think I'm above them or I can outsmart them or whatever. I don't know. But also the drive to drink is very strong, as you can see. And I was like 19. I'm not some haggard old barfly, like who's been pounding whiskey his whole life. I was young and it was already like a problem. And I didn't see it as that at the time, but I can see it now. Yeah. And I mean, I could do a whole podcast about Korea. That place was crazy. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to put kids, 18, 19-year-olds on the other side of the world, away from their family, with money to burn because everything's paid for. Your lodging, your food, it's all there. Your clothes, and then right off base is about a mile of bars and girls that will come sit on your lap if you pay them to and do things. It's risky, and for someone like me, it was like Xanadu. Like, where has this place been all my life? So, yeah, plenty more to tell about Korea, but I'm not going to get into it right now. And if this is Che listening, maybe after you're 18, you can hear some of those stories, but you're only 7 right now. So we'll skip that chapter for now. I left Korea after a couple of years and came home. Yeah. I didn't see any combat while I was in the army. The closest I came was when I was in Korea. A North Korean fishing boat had crossed into South Korean waters and we all lined up to, we had live rounds, so we were in our Hummers ready to go. We called them Humvees, and we were like, all right, we're going to go do this. This is it. And then by that afternoon, it was all called off. So that was that. But yeah, no, I never fired a round at anything but a target when I was in Korea or in the Army. So anyway, so while I was in Korea, my mom had moved from Arizona to Idaho. So when I got out, I ended up in Idaho. I had never had any intention of going to Idaho. I didn't know anything about Idaho, but that's where she was. That's where I ended up. So, I was making the most of my time there, and at about a month after my birthday, in January, I got my first DUI in Idaho, driving under the influence. And I think this was the time, I think I was driving from Boise to Nampa, which is like a 20-minute drive in the middle of the night, and passed out at the wheel and drove my car off the freeway, like into a ditch, like into like some farmer's field, into a ditch or whatever. And, like the wheels of my car ended up doing like one of these numbers. Yeah. So I got arrested for that. I think I got another one a year and a month later. I my drinking in my early to mid 20s was when it lost its innocence, you might say, where it wasn't just about partying and having fun. It started to be a real like crutch of sorts. And I had noticed I would be at a bar in the middle of the day and be like the youngest one there by far. And, my friends I used to party with that were my peers that were my age were like, dude, it's Tuesday afternoon. Like, we drink on like Friday and Saturday. It was at this point the recording cut off because a phone call came in from my homie Rigo. So that will be the end of part 1. Stay tuned next week for part 2. Yes, that's right. I went an hour and a half talking about myself. Thank you for listening. Thanks for stopping by. See you next week.